and I quote, "I'll be there in a minute. Give me a second."
Time is relative, folks. Time is relative.
Yes. So, hey, cheers to everybody in the chat.
They're a division rival. I don't care how many wins they get. Screw them.
That wasn't the take I was expecting to hear.
I want to gush over watching live Chris Tanev.
I think that we completely underestimate the skill it takes to play defense.
One highlight or several highlights does not a Calder trophy make.
I'm stepping in here. I'm going to be the crotchety old man here. They need to learn patience. They need to understand the tension and everything and the drama.
How dare! Look at this! How is McDavid not getting a penalty?
You guys need to calm down with this, okay? You guys need to calm down with it.
Oh, it's been a mixed bag of emotions. I don't think any sports watcher in Canada could truly say that they're calm right now in a lot of ways. Welcome to the Shifts and Pucks podcast. Of course, you can follow us on Twitter at Shifts and Pucks, Facebook.com, Shifts and Pucks, YouTube.com, Shifts and Pucks, Twitch.com, Shifts and Pucks. Subscribe wherever you get your audio, as well as in the Area 51 Sports Network. It has currently, as we are doing this live here in Burnaby, 10:45 Pacific, 11:45 where Sean is in Calgary. We've already had the Davis Cup, Canada win the Davis Cup for the first time in their history. Canada scored their first men's goal in the World Cup, but have been eliminated from the World Cup with their 4-1 loss to Croatia. And we haven't even got started we're barely into breakfast, and so many things have happened. Sean.
Oh man, yeah. What a sports weekend and what a sports day. Yeah. First off, congrats to the Canada Tennis for winning the Davis Cup. Who would have thunk we would have gotten there? And then, it was not the outcome we wanted this morning versus Croatia, but the World Cup is tough, man. I went into this watching this tournament going, it's great that it's a bonus that they got to this tournament, because in 2026 you've got Mexico, US, and Canada hosting the tournament, and you're giving players like Alphonso Davies, Jonathan David, Tajon Buchanan, and amongst others, the experience that they can build on and hopefully put together a good effort on home soil next World Cup. Watching. I'm house sitting for a friend of mine and dog sitting, and the poor dog Winnie was got a little excited and a little. After the Davies goal, because I roared. I don't think there's a better way of putting it. That I roared when Alphonso Davies scored, because that was something that was a long time coming, and we after feeling a little deflated after him not scoring on that penalty kick against Belgium, opening the game up that way was amazing. But yeah, it's a learning experience for Canada, but they do belong at the World Cup now.
Yeah, and I mean, it's that Croatia team is that was a very strong team who came to play, had an opportunity really at this point. This was probably one of their opportunities to make sure, after Belgium lost earlier, to make sure that they cemented themselves into the round of 16. They got some cannon. They got some bulletin board material from John Herdman. I think, and they just came in very motivated. I think they're probably underrated by a lot of people in terms of World Cup. People forget that they were in the finals, or some may have, if you're not following that closely. So, yeah, you come away with a win in Morocco. It's one win. It's a building block, really, for a year. I agree with you for 26, and I think for all of the things that this Canadian men's team has been through, and this entire soccer program has been through. That's for another soccer type of podcast. I just think congratulations to them that they got this far overall. You know, so kudos to them. Leave it there, and then congratulations to the tennis, and I think that's great too. And I know we are specifically on hockey here, but I think I've always said it: the better other sports do in this country is better for everybody. So, and I think this has a great opportunity to grow the game of both the game of tennis and the game of soccer in this country as we go forward.
I mean, assuming Sportsnet and whatever feed they had can stay up and let us watch it, because that was an issue, unfortunately.
Oh, okay.
They lost their feed at near the end, and it sucks. But yeah,
I have to be honest. I was asleep until 8 o'clock, so I did miss the tennis. I can't stay up for everything. I stayed up late to watch I was out and I stayed up late to watch the Canucks game. So, to rewatch it. So I need to sleep at some point.
Yep.
Well, we got a lot to get into here, and we'll get into the Canucks and the Flames a little bit later into this podcast. But I know that some people are going to say that this is Toronto, but I do think that it's important to start by acknowledging the passing of Borje Salming. We saw a very emotional presentation to him not a couple weeks ago when the Vancouver Canucks were in town. The Sheldon Keefe started all six Swedes actually, correction, in that lineup that night. It was a really special moment and a kind of a touching way for the fan base to reconnect with Borje Salming, especially for newer fans, because he, of course, was a player in the 80s, and some Leaf fans and some hockey fans were not alive when Borje Salming was alive. But in a nutshell, the importance of this far beyond the Toronto Maple Leafs aspect of this and where he was is the groundwork that he laid for Swedes and Europeans to come play in the National Hockey League. He was one of the first to do it. And he came in at a time when this was around the time when the Swede was considered a very soft player. And, well, I mean, he was first, but he's talked about how he would play the same way that other Canadian defensemen would play, and he would be considered soft, and some Canadian defensemen would play the same way and would be considered hard-nosed. So he faced a lot of adversity coming here. And of course, learning the language, learning the culture. I think just in terms of all of that, that's where Borje Salming absolutely deserves to be acknowledged for that. I don't look at him as one of the greatest defensemen who ever played the game. That's not where I wouldn't put him on any of those lists. I mean, I thought he was a very good defenseman. I'm not saying that, but I think the pioneer route is what I think about with Borje Salming, and I think that should be honored as much as anything.
Yeah, without Borje Salming coming in and being a trailblazer, we wouldn't be celebrating Daniel and Henrik making the Hall of Fame.
Yeah,
we wouldn't be celebrating. The Flames fans wouldn't be celebrating having Elias Lindholm and Michael Backlund on their team. So I think, he deserves a lot of praise for what he went through. Because when you are a trailblazer, you are going to take a lot of abuse and misconceptions and everything. So the presentation that the Leafs had for him on that Saturday was absolutely tear-jerking, and it's maybe, and then let alone what. Hopefully, this will help bring some more eyes and money towards ALS research as well.
Yeah. Of course, for those who don't know, and most who do, who Flames assistant GM Chris Snow is battling that. There are others battling that as well. Kelsey Snow continues to tweet Chris's wife about his progress. Yeah, that's a very devastating disease, and support is needed on that. Yeah, so really, I think just wanted to acknowledge that off the top. The passing of Borje Salming, I think, an important figure in hockey here, and yeah. And I know that some people would be thinking like there's been, I don't know where everybody was at. I didn't really get a chance to see all of the full coverage because I worked during the afternoons the last couple of weeks, but I didn't see a lot of people complain about the TV coverage and too much Toronto and Borje Salming. But this is a guy, just to reemphasize that, this is a guy I do think that deserves the time given on that, no matter what team he played for. He's an important pioneer. But anyway, and before so this will probably, we kind of wish we had Tyler here, but before we get into we usually start with the teams. We usually go into Canucks and Flames, and then or try when we do our specific podcast, we start with the teams and then go elsewhere. But I think that one of the big stories this week was the entire subject of goaltender interference. You had the Wednesday night, Toronto, New Jersey. New Jersey had 3 goals called back, 2 for goaltender interference, 1 for kicking into the net. Connor Garland had a goal called back against the Colorado Avalanche. That I'm not going to lie, I did not think it was goaltender interference, but this is part of the Devils, I think, got more of the notoriety because they were throwing stuff on the ice, and I don't think that I don't think anybody should be throwing things on the ice. Absolutely not. But then again, on Friday, Dallas plays Winnipeg. Connor Hellebuck's mask gets knocked off of his face as I wanted to say Pavelski, a forward, goes towards the net. Hellebuck is laying there almost dead. The goal counts. So I just wanted to start with this entire concept around replay, goaltender interference, and which I think this is probably, of all the things that are, I'm reducing my rage on Twitter. I don't really want to spend. I know that we'll get into this a little bit more. I think a lot of people are consuming a lot of their energy right now when they're tweeting is a lot of rage, and I don't wish to contribute to the rage part, but when I do get ragey, it's this entire concept of goaltender interference. And it's not because it's just this year, Sean, because I looked back. We remember Anaheim and Edmonton, the playoff year of 5 years ago now, I want to say, when Ryan Getzlaf ran into Cam Talbot and that was ruled a goal. We have been dealing with this issue for far, far, far too long for it to be this inconsistent. Like this is to the point of embarrassment to the National Hockey League. And I don't know what to say about any of the goals in New Jersey, because I've seen that Nick Vashtian goal where a skate knocks into a goalie skate, and I've seen that count. I've even seen the Thomas Tatar one when he hit Matt Murray. I've seen that count. And I've even seen Connor Garland's goal ruled not goaltender interference. I'm so baffled by the inconsistency of this entire thing. Like that's the part that that's the part that frustrates me. It is not consistent, and it depends on who's looking at this camera angle, and it's become an embarrassment to the National Hockey League.
You nailed it with the idea. It all comes down to the opinion of the officials who are making that call and watching the replays. There's no hard and fast rule on what is or isn't goaltender interference. So you are up to you are leaving it up to the officials who are watching it, and everyone has a different opinion on what it is. I don't know how you fix that unless you just. Unless you're going to make it as black and white as pucks over glass, puck out of play, or if it if it's shot out of play, it's a penalty. You put something in where you put players in the crease that gets blown dead or something like that, like you see in international hockey. But because they've had video replay for a few years. We've been dealing with what is or isn't goaltender interference since the inception of hockey, since inception of that rule. And they still can't, and we still don't know what is or isn't goaltender interference game in, game out, year in, year out. So I have no faith that will ever change. It's something that you're just going to have to deal with, or I'm at the point of laughing about it because it is comical at this point because you just don't know. You have the Connor Hellebuyck situation where he loses his mask and it counts. I don't know how that is. This is where I if you go back through a few former episodes, you would see me talk about how I think we don't need we were overusing video replay and everything like that. And when you can't even get it right with video replay, or at least get it to a point where we as fans and those as media, we have an idea of what to expect when these calls come up, and we're not absolutely miffed every time something else happens. I don't know if we're ever going to get there. So at this point, it's just grin and bear it. Like you're seeing you'll see bad calls and missed calls and confusing calls in any sport all the time. But you have to get to a point where it's less and less. It happens every once in a while, not just becomes a talking point for us asking where the consistency is.
Yeah, there needs to be some progress. And I think that one of the things why don't we name the replay official during the game? Why isn't that whoever is doing the replay, why don't we identify that person?
Well, the one part of that is it's not there's not necessarily a replay official, depending on what the ruling is, because they go in and they watch replays on a tablet. The two, if it's offside, it's the linesman that view it. If it's
but Toronto contributes to it, right? So Toronto, it goes to Toronto. They're watching.
They'll watch and they'll say this is what we see, and then they'll talk about it. But it's still up to the officials there on the ice to make that call.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, it doesn't. There's no explanation. Like there's no. Like I mean. Like it's all subjective. Like you go back even to the Blake Coleman goal in Game 5. I mean, most people. I mean, I haven't. It's very rare that I've actually heard from an Oiler fan that said that goal should have counted. Most Oiler fans are saying, "Yeah, that goal shouldn't have counted." I'm sorry, right? So we even go back. Like it's so so inconsistent, and we don't have a clear communication of how they are making the determination of this ruling. And maybe it comes down to my call again that Sportsnet and all of the Canadian broadcasters need to bring an official in to explain what the officials are looking at. And maybe as a fan, I'm not educated enough on what exactly they're determining as goaltender interference. Maybe that's it. Maybe that would help ease my mind a little bit. Or they just need to even flat out figure out a way of making that making that more consistent. And I don't know, like is offside as annoying as an offside challenge is, I find it for the most part, it's pretty consistent. Like, and if it's cut and dry, like you mentioned with the puck over the glass, cut and dry. This isn't cut and dry, and it's frustrating. Like I don't know.
Now that Blake Coleman one was more about kicking motion than anything else,
right,
as
but
opposed to
I get
goaltender interference.
but I guess in terms of evaluating the replay, that's kind of where I was going. You're right. But goaltender interference, I have no idea. Like,
Although the kicking motion as well is very much a subjective thing as well. So it's not like anytime you get into subjectivity, that's when you're going to have these inconsistencies. And sometimes we go 3-4 weeks, a couple months without any sort of goalie interference or kicking motion sort of controversies, and then we get a week where we get them all.
yeah, and this was the week we got them all for sure. With the hollow one, the kick, I could again. I think I could see the argument for both, because there's an argument on my end that he was trying to kick that to his stick. He kicked it, but he was trying to kick it to his stick and knock it in with his stick, and that didn't end up happening. So I don't know. I just have no idea. I have no idea. I'm not endorsing fans throwing things on the ice, but I have no idea. Like, I honestly don't have any idea how a Nick Bastian goal doesn't count and that Dallas goal on Connor Hellebuck does.
Yeah, it was. I think I've talked with Tyler about this. It's not a rule, because there's no like flat out, this is what you can do, this is what you can't do. It's subjective. It's an opinion of the official of whether or not the goalie was interfered with or not.
Yeah.
And hell, you look at was it last night as well, where there was the high stick that didn't get called because there wasn't an injury on the play.
Yeah. 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 Yeah, I don't know. It's one of those things. I guess we're going to talk about this in as the weeks go on, but it's very confusing to me, and I'm legitimately worried it's going to cost somebody a Stanley Cup. And we got kind of
it already that type of stuff it already has. Just ask Buffalo.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
So
yeah.
I think I'm just like I've hit the point of just like numbness with hockey a little bit here, because I was going back to the World Cup, and just the vibration of watching that first game. I don't have that right now. And I think that part of it is it's a short tournament and everything matters as opposed to an 82 game season. But even with the some of these bad calls and all stuff, I'm starting to get back a little more emotional about it. But sometimes I just look at it and go, well, what are you gonna do? Like, if they're gonna challenge for goaltender interference, and you just, if you have any, I don't have any idea. Most of the time, I just flip a coin and go, well, what's gonna happen? And just have to deal. Luckily for the Canucks, or that they were able to
win the game.
Well, they were able to win the game. They were able to. They scored again pretty quickly after that. So it didn't come back and bite them, but.
And the Winnipeg goal, that didn't come. Well, I mean, it kind of comes back to bite them because Dallas gets a point, but But I don't know. I think that there needs to be some more clearance on this, and that's kind of maybe we'll leave that conversation. We'll continue to talk about that going forward. I have a little presentation here I'd like to share with everyone, because I'm going to do I wanted to do my own little study. And this is the study around the theory around the American Thanksgiving playoffs. So because the stat is out there, it's depending on who you talk to, it's around 75% of teams that make the that are in the playoffs as of American Thanksgiving will make the playoffs. So I have designed. I will show you who the matchups are as of today or as of American Thanksgiving if the playoffs start today. We'll keep an eye on this as we get through this, and I don't know how to get rid of that part, but that's fine. I think you can. Can I enlarge this? Probably. Here. So the Eastern Conference matchups as of Thursday, and I'm doing this based on points, not based on percentage, right? So the wild card matchups would be Tampa Bay would be heading to Boston to take on the first place in the Atlantic Boston Bruins. The New York Rangers, who many had predicted to go to for be in first place in the Metropolitan, are actually in the wild card spot. They would be facing the second seed New Jersey Devils. The Detroit Red Wings would be facing the Toronto Maple Leafs, and the Carolina Hurricanes would be facing the New York Islanders. In the West, St. Louis would be wild card 2. They would be playing the number 1 seed Vegas Golden Knights. Calgary would be the number 1 wild card seed, and they would be facing number 2 seed Dallas. So that would be a rematch of last year, except Dallas would get home ice. And then you got the 2-3 in the Pacific would be the LA Kings taking in Seattle, and the Winnipeg Jets would actually not taking on Dallas. They would be taking on Colorado. My apologies there. I'll just quickly fix that. But that is your match. That would be your matchups as of Thursday. So we're gonna keep in track on that of see what the matchups. I want to keep a track on that. Not that I don't believe anyone, but I'm kind of genuinely curious if this year is different than any other year. It could be. We're seeing a lot of teams that got off to great starts that could regress to the mean. I'm wondering if we're seeing that as an example of the Vegas Golden Knights, who have certainly stumbled a little last 2 days. If this was a Vegas Golden Knight podcast, we'd be throwing some things in the air in frustration, maybe, with their last 2 performances. So we'll have to see. And, if you're Calgary, I mean, I don't think that people were expecting Calgary. Flames fans weren't expecting the Flames to be in a wild card spot. Oiler fans are certainly not happy where their team is at this particular point in time, although they did come back from a 3-0 win deficit yesterday. I don't think that 10-10 is particularly where a lot of people had the Edmonton Oilers, and no Edmonton Oilers fans at this point. So I wonder if we're going to see a little bit of some of these top teams regress and some of these lower teams that we were expecting more from start to build as the year goes on. But I'll be curiously watching this.
Yeah. So I think it was Cillian Valji of TSN tweeted out that it's about 75 to 77% of teams that are in the playoffs as of American Thanksgiving have made the playoffs since 1993-94. So yeah, it is a significant amount, but that doesn't mean that teams can't come from outside in. So I think it will be, because it feels like the start of the season has had a few more surprises than we normally get. You've got Seattle, you've got New Jersey, you've got the Islanders all in there. I don't think people were expecting any of those teams to be there. And then you've got Edmonton, who wasn't in the playoffs at that point. So we'll see.
Yet St. Louis have an 8-game losing streak, and St. Louis have an 8-game winning streak at this point this year. But I think that this is the thing that I'm concluding, and it's not. I feel like there's a lot more in Twitter. Like I talked about this earlier. I feel like Twitter's a bit more critical of a lot of things right now. Seen that in Flames land, where you're seeing a lot of people tweet, play the kids. It's not how you start, it's how you finish. And I think that there's Daryl Sutter's one of the people that understand that more than anyone else. This isn't like, I don't know if I'm not saying he's happy with the start that the Flames had. But I guess it's starting when I guess we're going with the Flames here. This team had it really easy in terms of their games last year. They had Lindholm, Goodrow, and Tkachuk were instant chemistry. They were instantly clicking. Tanev and Shillington were a pair that just it clicked. So many things clicked. Now this year, so many things are not clicking, and it's a struggle right now to get everything together. And you're still, I still think the three big new pieces in the Flames lineup, Kadri, Huberdeau, and Uyghur, are still in some sort of an adjustment mode. I think that people's offensive expectations in Nazem Kadri probably were higher than they should have been. And I think, quite frankly, I wonder if looking back at this, Flames fans' expectation of this team were a little higher than they should have been. And I'm not one that's saying just get into the playoffs, everything is going to work out, but I think it's how you get into the playoffs is what's most important for Daryl Sutter and the Flames. And winning the division doesn't necessarily mean that you're not going to have a chance to go on a good playoff run. It's how you're building towards that. I think that's where Sutter is coming from. That's not, again, I think there's a lot to criticize on the Flames, but that's kind of why I'm not panicked about the Flames, because I do think they're going through some adversity. It's not easy, but I wonder in a lot of ways that the way this may help them later on.
It might. They haven't had Markstrom at the level he was at last year, which doesn't help things. They haven't found the offense that they don't have the arguably the best line in hockey anymore, and they haven't been able to find that. And I mean, part of me wants to be a little bit smug with what you just said about Kadri there, Kev. Because I was saying that I thought that the expectations for him were a bit over the top from Flames fans, and he started off so hot as well. Like he was finding ways to contribute every game for the first little bit, and then now he's cooled off, and he's actually on the pace that I think is fair. 15 points in 21 games. Maybe he can bump it, maybe a little bit up him, but I think that's he is where I thought he'd be, and that's not a bad player. That's not a. I just think
he hasn't been bad. I don't think he's been I don't think he's been bad. My issue with this team right now is
neither have I. I just think.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, I think the center play for the Flames has been fine, but I think you're needing something else. You're needing to find a way to have to get contributions from outside of them. Manny hasn't been good enough. Dubé hasn't been good enough. Huberdeau hasn't been good enough. And when those three aren't going offensively, it's going to be tough sledding offensively for this team, because who else do you have? You got Toffoli, okay, but then outside of that, you're gonna Coleman's not someone who's going to light the lamp a lot. That's not his game. That's not his role. And then you're still trying to find that other piece. Rasichka's done well. And since he's been put up on that the top line, but you're still missing offense elsewhere in the lineup.
Yeah, Mangiapane not nearly good enough in terms of goals, and not getting enough criticism. I don't feel enough for his play. I don't think it's even remotely been good enough. And I don't know if I don't think him and Kadri are working as well as people want to say. That line is the line that's kind of concerning me. Toffoli and Ruzicka should not be your best wingers. At all due respect to Tyler Toffoli, he doesn't give you the same fear that Matthew Tkachuk does, because you don't you don't know if Matthew Tkachuk is going to score or Matthew Tkachuk is going to like chop you in the knee or whatever Matthew Tkachuk is going to do. Like that, there's a difference between what Tkachuk brings and Toffoli brings. Huberdeau, I mean, I think for me, one of the issues with Huberdeau is he was trying to set up Lindholm offensively all the time, and I don't think that that's what Sutter wanted, and I think that that was a detriment to his game. I don't mind him with Backlund. I think he's played some of his best hockey in terms of like just quality hockey. He's not getting points, and he needs to get points. I do agree with you on that. But there needs to Mangiapane hasn't been good enough, and I'm sorry, we need to have a serious conversation about the future of Dylan Dubé. This was a guy that people were, and Devin was on this. There was a lot of people that were saying, "Hey, this is a guy we could trade for a Jack Eichel. This is a guy we could trade for a Mark Stone. This is a guy that was considered a legitimate prospect." 2 goals in 21 games is not nearly enough for a guy that should be a top 6 forward, that has the potential to blend in and make himself into a top 6 forward. It's not nearly been good enough. To the point that I think that there's a legitimate argument that Dubé needs some press box time. Like I think it should be an indictment. It's an indictment on Dylan Dubé that Trevor Lewis, Milan Lucic, and Brett Ritchie have more goals. Like as much as there's criticism towards Daryl Sutter of his play of them, I understand the criticism. But when Dylan Dubé has 2 goals and is contributing nothing either offensively or defensively, you have to play somebody. And it's got to be these guys, I guess, if Dylan Dubé isn't going to contribute. Like to me, this is more of an indictment to Dubé than it is Sutter's deployment of the lines, which is a legitimate. I'm not saying it's not a criticism because I think that there's some valid criticism of that, but you're not getting anything from Dylan Dubé.
Yeah, that line in the last 5 games has not been good enough. All 3 of Kadri, Dubé, and Mangiapane are sub 50% in the shot share stat, and their expected goals and expected goals for and against are also sub 50%. That should be a line that's a line that needs to be above 50% for the Flames to in both those categories to be able to produce offense. Because if that line's hemmed in their own, spending more time in their own zone or in the neutral zone than in the offensive zone, how is Kadri supposed to produce at the level that everyone Flames fans were hoping?
Yeah.
So it's I don't know why Sutter has stuck with that line for so long, because I don't think it's working.
No, I don't either. That to me, that's the line that concerns me the most. That line specifically is the one that concerns me the most. Now, I guess in terms of the other question here and the big conversation now is finding that offensive spark. And the name Matthew Phillips has come up again. This is my thought process here. So the Wranglers play the Canucks today. They are off until December 2nd. The Flames play Matthew Tkachuk and the Florida Panthers on Tuesday. They play the Montreal Canadiens on Thursday. And then the Wranglers go on the road for a while. If there was a time for there to be a call-up, I would think that this would be the week to do it. Because you're at home, you have some time off. This would be an opportunity to have a look and bring someone up. I know that people are saying there's no way that Sutter does it, but I also don't think that the Flames organization can sit back and look at what Matthew Phillips has done with the Wranglers and say he doesn't deserve at least a look. Like to me, if you're about rewarding people for effort, Matthew Phillips deserves at least a look in the National Hockey League the next 2 days. And you're at home. It's an opportunity that if you want to shelter him, if you need to shelter him in terms of minutes and protect him, you have an opportunity to do that. I don't know. This is the time to do it.
What line would you put him on, or who would his line mates be? Because I think that's a big question there. Would you just slot him in, sit Dubé and slot him in with Kadri and Mangiapane?
Honestly, I would try it. I honestly would try it. What would hurt? What would happen? He's not going to score. they'll allow another goal. What were the stats again? What's the difference between what Dubé would give and what Phillips would give right now?
I mean, that's fair. But
I mean, you could do a Kadri.
my own.
You could do a Kadri Coleman Phillips line. Sorry, because Coleman is responsible defensively, and that may allow Phillips to do that. And you put Matt Japani with what I call the center whisperer, which is Backlund, who seems to get the best out of people when they need to do it. I wonder if that's the way that you go.
Yeah, maybe. I think that's that. I was actually going to go there. I was like, my only concern about that would be maybe whether or not if that's the right fit for Matthew Phillips, because Mangiapane's not necessarily a big guy either. So you maybe throwing a Coleman on that line, or even just I think that might be a good. I think that I would do that. But if you don't call it Phillips, is there other options that the Flames and Sutter could do line wise? We saw that they started to reunite Toffoli, Huberdeau, and Lindholm at the end there. The last game and the last couple games actually. Are we going to see that get reunited? And if that's the case, what happens with Backlund? Who's he going to play with? Because the other thing for me, I think if Toffoli's going, maybe it's time to see if he can find some chemistry with one of the other centers as well, and start building depth. If you can find a way, although. Because I was thinking, like, what would a line of Huberdeau, Lindholm, and Coleman? How would that work?
I don't think it would be terror. I mean, the original plan was Lindholm, Goudreau, and Coleman, so I don't think that would hurt. I wouldn't mind seeing a Kadri, Toffoli. I guess you could keep Dubé there, and then you have Backlund, Mangiapane, and Ruzicka together. And then I guess you do your mishmash of you do that law firm of Lewis, Lucic, and Ritchie as your fourth line. I don't know where they're at with Kevin Rooney, but he certainly doesn't seem to be highly considered in the future of the Flames lineup for the next little bit anyway. They haven't seemed to be super happy with him. But I mean, that's the other, I guess that's the other. Unless the other way is you throw Pelche and see where you're at with Pelche, and you throw him with Kadri and see if they can wreak havoc on especially in a game where Matthew Tkachuk is going to come in again Calgary, and he's going to wreak havoc. He's going to stir it up. Maybe you bring up Jacob Pelche and you try to match that. That's another possibility. But to me, like, I think where I agree with the people here is I do think that I think it's time for Matthew Phillips to have at least a look. I don't think that it's if you're a legitimate organization who wants people to earn it, and if that's the way that you want to do things, you got to. And you saw that with Michael Stone, you saw it with Oliver Shillington. You got to give Matthew Phillips deserves a look. Like, I don't think that it's
Yeah, it's either that or you make a move. You make a trade.
And there's no move to be made right now. Like, to be honest with you, as much as, I mean, we'll talk about that with the Canucks, as much as everyone wants to make a trade, it's right now, I don't think the trade options are not really there.
Yeah, I'm not sure what's out there that would make sense for the Flames, especially because they're looking for ideally a right winger, a right shot. I think you'd be wanting someone who's on the big side, and is a legit top six forward and can forecheck. I think you just want another Blake Coleman, honestly.
Yep. But what
I think that might be the issue with that. Yeah, I think that might be the issue with that Mangiapane, Dubé, Kadri line is, like, there's no one that is like Dubé and Mangiapane as pesky and annoying as they can be. I wouldn't call them like great like intimidating forecheckers. And I think
No.
that that's what that line needs, and that's what someone to mix it up and get into the other team's face with Kadri. And Mangiapane he can do that at times, but it's just not consistently enough. And Dubé, I think we talked about this last season. What is Dubé? Like what?
Yeah.
Like what is his role within this team?
I don't know. This is a guy that I think that people have been far too patient with in some ways. This is it's not a fair comparison. I'm going to admit that right off the part, but it's in some ways this is Höglander in the sense of he's been given he needs something else, but they're not able to give it to him at this point in time.
Well, I see.
It's a
the difference
bad
between
comparison.
those two is that Dubé's been in the. I understand where you're coming from. Höglander's in his third year in the league now. He
maybe a more accurate comparison would be Puljujarvi. Would that be more of an accurate comparison? A guy that has some talent, that guy that has been given a shot in a top 6 role, but hasn't necessarily capitalized it the way that people want to. Maybe that's more of an accurate comparison.
Yes. Except that again, I still feel like Puljujarvi has a better idea on what his role is on every line. I don't think Dubé really does. And that's where I do see the Höglander comparison. Other than just like that, feel like with Dubé, he's been in the league for a few years now. He's on his he's making $2.3 million. So on the cap. So like it's not like he's on his EL trying to figure that out. This is his fifth season in the NHL. Like he needs to figure this out. I think this is more on Dubé than it is on anyone else. He needs to charge and figure out what his role in the league is. Yeah, he was a second round pick and a highly touted prospect at times, but at this point, what is he?
Yeah.
Hasn't broken 20 goals. He had 18 in 79 games in last season. He goes. A lot of this comes through the whole pandemic years, but it's not like he was on a 20 goal pace in the weird year. He had 11 and 51. It wasn't quite there. So what is he? I think that's the biggest thing there is what does he bring that's different from, say, a Mangiapane? What does he bring that's different from Matthew Phillips, potentially, right? What does he bring that's different than Toffoli? What does he bring? Because it's not, I don't think he's a penalty killer, is he?
He has killed penalties at times, but I don't think he's a consistent penalty killer.
And see, he's had 4 minutes and 16 seconds of penalty kill time as per natural stat trick. So that's less than Mangiapane. The only forwards that have less penalty kill time than him this season in the last. Oh, sorry, I've got this to the last 5 games. That was the last 5 games. So in the last 5 games, the only forwards with less penalty kill time than Dylan Dubé are Jonathan Huberdeau and Tyler Toffoli.
Yeah.
And then you throw that to the other side with power play. He's not on the first unit. And honestly, it looks like he saw that Rzic just scored a power play goal yesterday. So again, what is he bringing that's different and that helps this team win?
especially when Adam Ruzicka's doing stuff. Yeah.
Dubé doesn't have any power play time in the last 5 games.
Yeah, I don't know. It's again, maybe you throw him as a center you throw him on that center of the fourth line and try that. But honestly, I heard Peter, our friend of the show, Peter Labardia, say this yesterday. I think that this is and maybe Dubé and Mangiapane are the most guilty of this, and there are forwards that are too comfortable. It feels to me that Dubé is at best most comfortable. Like, you hear Sutter complain, reduced Ruzicka's ice time because you see that a lot with young kids, and then he comes out and plays better. Like, so you see the push of Adam Ruzicka here. I think it's fair to expect more from Dylan Dubé, and I think he's become way too comfortable right now. Just to me, too comfortable of a player there. Just back to Kadri for a super quick second here. So one of his reasons that he was so successful last year in Colorado was I think he had to play a lot with Rantanen last year. And Rantanen is different than Mangiapane because he plays a bigger game. He's able to keep, he's able to kind of he has the strength of keeping defensemen away from the puck. Very skilled with the puck. I probably underrated. I don't know if I would call him underrated, but he's really he's probably a lot more skilled than people give him credit for. But that would indicate to me that I wonder if he would be more productive with a Toffoli who is kind of plays a similar game, more of a similar, closer type of game to Rantanen than Mangiapane does. I feel like Mangiapane, he has the skill, but I don't think Mangiapane can shove people or keep people away from the puck as well as Mikko Rantanen can, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think Kadri did step up and play with Rantanen while McKinnon was hurt.
Yeah, well, McKinnon was out.
Yeah. So 5-on-5. Last year, according to Natural Stat Trick, they played 145 minutes together. So it's not that much. But
who was he playing with mostly then last year?
Let's see here.
Was it Nikushkin? It wasn't Nikushkin.
God, I wish there was a better way of... let's see here. Almost 360 minutes with Nichushkin.
Okay, maybe I'm wrong. But even Nikushkin
I think
Nikushkin's more closer to what Rantanen type of player than a Mangiapane is
my
point.
Big physical, yeah.
Yeah.
He had 550 minutes with Burakovsky. So he played a little bit all around, a little bit more of a due to injuries and all that.
Yeah.
How long did he play with Landeskog? Name there for the Avs, and it wasn't that much. So I think he played all over the place. But I agree with the idea that I think he needs a bigger body, a Coleman Coleman would be the best option there, I think. Which is why I said, like, going back to what I said, the Flames would need to be looking for trade wise is a bigger body on that right side that can play, that is a legit top 6 forward. Can't just be another, like, throw top 6 Lucic up there and hope for the best.
Yeah.
But
well, right now though, it's from the Flames' perspective. I don't know what you have to offer for that. You're not giving up any of your top 4 defensemen. I don't think that you're still waiting on Oliver Shillington. Zadorov and Michael Stone cannot get you that. They sent down Dennis Gilbert today. Wonder if that's just a paper transaction. I just don't. I don't think that option is there at this particular point in time. I think they have to ride with what they have and kind of provide that spark and I still think the Flames need another defenseman, and that's the other issue. So I don't think you can give up, even if you felt like it's worth the risk to give up one of those top four. You don't have a top four behind them to even add to that depth right now, and you don't really have the draft capital that you get involved in some of the bigger names. I just think you got to ride it. Like with this team, I think right now, and this is where I'm not panicked, is you got to ride it out. Let's just see what happens here. Like, I mean, I think sometimes we think trades solve everything. This right now, a trade wouldn't solve anything. I think this team has chemistry issues, and adding another element of the to the chemistry issue, I don't think helps. I think you just got to ride it out. You got to ride it out at this particular point and see where you're at.
Yeah, unless something's up that absolutely makes sense, I think you're there. I think it's time to maybe the blender needs to come out with these lines, because I don't think that Dubé, Mangiapane, Kadri line is doing what it needs to do, and you need to find a way to create offense throughout the lineup.
Yeah, and I think that's what Sutter's intent is. It's just not coming out the way that he's intending. So we'll see. I think it's going to be a very interesting game on Tuesday. I think that's a very intriguing game. It'll be interesting to see how Matthew Tkachuk is, the response to Matthew Tkachuk will be. I think it'll be probably a mix of cheers and boos for him. But I think it's going to be a very emotional game on Tuesday when Matthew Tkachuk and the Florida Panthers return and the Flames wear their reverse retros for the first time.
Yeah, it'll be very interesting. I can't wait to see what the response that Tkachuk gets. I think it'll be a mix of things, and then he'll do some Matthew Tkachuk stuff during the game, and the boo birds will rain.
Yeah. I do agree. We'll get into the Canucks here in a second, but I do agree. I think Tkachuk will get more cheers than Johnny Gaudreau. I think Gaudreau is going to get full on booed. Just the way that how that all will handle. I do think that that's going to happen, but I think there'll be some cheers for Matthew there. So because of how they handled it differently. But let's hop to the Canucks here. I think the big question for me right now is in goal. You've got Spencer Martin, who played 2 straight games, has 2 straight wins. You've got Thatcher Demko, who I guess like Jacob Markstrom, he's not at his best at this particular point. I guess maybe I have a second question with this Demko thing here that I've been thinking a little bit about. But who are you continuing tonight? They play San Jose. I'm assuming you go with I wonder if I don't know what you do at this.
They're not going to go with Martin. They'll play Demko, but you're just keep feeding Martin a little more, a start or 2 extra a week that you would have planned, and let Demko work through this. He last couple games I felt that he's looked better, and he's getting closer to what we expect from Thatcher, but with the way Spencer Martin's playing, there's no reason not to play him. So
I go ahead. Sorry, you're right.
I don't think being the Canucks Vancouver market, Canucks fans and all that we're so conditioned to quote unquote goalie controversies. But this one isn't it. This is Martin just playing really well. And Demko is just not quite there yet. And you ride Martin until Demko's back. Until Demko's back to the level that we know he can be at. There's no reason to just ride Demko until the legs fall off. You've got Martin, who's playing really well, so play him a few extra games. And I think this is a fantastic. This is fantastic for the Canucks to have Martin playing at the level he is, so that you don't have to feel that you have to force the issue with Demko.
Do you think with Demko, it was a situation where he had to make last year some unbelievable saves because of the way that everything was going, that he like that this year we're looking at him and he's not making these sensational saves, so we're like, wow, Demko is not playing as well. Or like, I guess what I'm trying to say is, did Demko almost play a little bit over his head, and we're kind of regressing a little bit back to the mean a little bit here to him? Like, I'm not saying that he's a terrible, like I'm not saying that he's a terrible goalie, but he probably had to do a lot more than other goalies in terms of what was expected to him to keep the Canucks in games. That I think it's just kind of, there's a sort of a regression to this point, and he may not be the guy that makes the Dominic Hasek save all the time, but he may end up just being a solid goaltender that we appreciate.
I think what's happened is, I think he's not been. I don't think he's been horrible. I just don't think. Yeah, I don't think he's made the spectacular saves at the same level and consistencies that he did last year, and then when he was playing against Vegas in the bubble as well. But I think there was also just there might have been some bad habits that have built up because he's had to be so scrambly that teams were able to exploit, and it's just him tighten those up a little bit more.
Yeah.
He's the thing with goaltending is, I think he's played at that level for long enough that I'm not concerned. Like, he showed in the bubble, and he showed all last year, and he played really well for what it was in that weird division year. That I just look at that, and I expect him to be back closer to what we saw last year than what he has shown this year.
Yeah,
because you also look at it, and it's not like when you look at the 5-on-5 save percentage between Demko and Martin. Demko's at 911 and Martin's at 923. I think a lot of it was just, there was some absolutely gifted goal, like times where, yeah, he would, the only way out of the Canucks giving up a goal was Demko making a miraculous save. And if you're relying on players, your goaltender making miraculous saves, and you're gonna have a lot more volatile results for your goaltender and how well they're playing. So I think you're starting to see the Canucks play a little bit better defensively right now, and Martin has played well enough that he's getting a few extra starts. But I've seen, from what I've watched over the past few games from Demko, is I've seen closer to him trusting the system in front of him too. I think that's a big part there. But he's closer to what I expect from him than what he's shown for the most part this season.
Yeah, I wouldn't worry. I'm not worried about him per se, and I don't think that there's a goaltending controversy. I think it's I think it's found money in a lot of ways. We talked about found money last year with the Flames and a lot of things. Spencer Martin has become found money for the Canucks, right? A guy that you can rely on a little bit more, and you don't have to play Demko as much, but Demko is still your number one. Spencer Martin is not a number one yet in this league. I'm not saying he will not become a number one, but he's not a number one right now, but he's getting there, and that's good, right? So, and I mean, overall, other this week, I guess they played. I thought this was probably their best week. They had that brutal third period against Vegas on Tuesday, but I mean, overall, like, you look back at that Colorado game, and specifically, they gave up the 2-man advantage goal. They come back 3-2, and then they looked really sharp against Vegas last night, and so this is, I think, where I'm kind of coming to the conclusion of, Sean. it may be easier to bitch and say, okay, tank or play the kids. And I'm saying this for both but everybody. This is a hockey Twitter. Play the kids. Things are going down. Everything is horrible. The sky is falling. To me, I'm becoming more of a person that's like, let's just wait and see what's really going on here. Like, I do think the Canucks need to have a longer term look at their organization. I'm not saying that, but some of it, like the idea of trading all of this to try to get another shot at Connor Bedard, I'm sorry, that's ridiculous. And that's nonsense. But I think, to me, just let's see where this team is at. Let's see where your team is at before you start pressing any panic buttons at this particular point. It's, I don't know. I feel like right now with hockey Twitter, it's, if your team isn't winning, it's a complete disaster on the ice. And I don't necessarily think that that's always the case. I think in an 82 game season, you're going to have ups and downs. I look at the Oilers last year. They were off to, I mean, everybody was laughing. They were like, oh my gosh, this team is not going to make the playoffs with two of the greatest players of the generation. They got to the Western Conference Finals last year. So, I mean, they make a coaching change. They bring in Evander Kane. I'm not endorsing the love of Evander Kane, don't get me wrong, but they found a way to get to the Western Conference Finals. Tampa Bay, everyone thought was dead last year. Tampa Bay, it was dethroned. It's the year of the Florida Panther. But who gets to the final? Tampa Bay. So I'm just going to reiterate this. It's not how you start, it's how you finish. And I think reduce the fucking panic out there. Like, it's not as good as you think, and it's probably not as bad as you think. It's probably ultimately somewhere in the middle. That's what I'm concluding.
Yeah, I remember when Jim Rutherford talked about how he was very frustrated with this team because he doesn't feel like he has a good grasp what this team as a group looks like, because they just keep playing stupid hockey. Like, they weren't playing smart hockey. Their systems weren't what they just kept making bad decisions, and not playing their systems properly, or just not playing a good system. And so it's tough if you're a GM, you don't want to give up, or a president of hockey ops, you don't want to make rash decisions if you don't feel comfortable knowing what you're doing, like where the team is at. So seeing the way the Canucks have played the last few games is good, because you're starting to see what they could do with playing the systems properly, playing down deeper in the offensive zone a lot more willingly and a lot more often, because they just enough is enough with this dinking around with the puck around the up and high in the zone between the top of the circles and the blue line. That just needs to get out of their system as much as possible. And then you're also trying to find, you're trying to figure out who. The issue with the Canucks I've noticed also is they keep trying to have the veterans be the matchup role, when we're seeing some developments from Pettersson, and you're starting to see Kuzmenko's English get better, so he's understanding directions and system play a lot better now. So I can't wait to see tonight's game, seeing what they do with PD and that line, and how much they match him there at that line up against the top players of San Jose, because I think that's a development that's going to help this team. And
yep,
I still want to see them take a longer term approach here. I don't want them just constantly trying to do what they can to make the playoffs every year without building something properly. So I'm really hoping that they're able to make it take a 2-3 year approach here, going into that the trade deadline and beyond. But it's also to a point where I'm still going to enjoy the games. I'm still going to not get too far ahead of myself when I'm watching games, because it feels like there is that. And Kev, you talked about how like when your team is losing, it feels like every time there's something bad happens, it's an excuse for people to yell and scream and ask for a rebuild and say, well, this is why, and then when they do something well, it's crickets. So I think I want to see them. I want to see the Canucks take a longer term approach, but I'm also interested to see how if they can keep this style of play long term, because if they can, then they're going to be a better team than a lot of people are making them out think they are.
Yep.
But the other troubling stat that's out there is the Canucks have not won a game where they've scored less than 4 goals. So if you're not going to be able to win low scoring games, that you're not going to be able to win the big games.
No, I agree with that. I do agree with that. And again, I'm not saying don't have concerns, but I don't know. It's somewhere in between what I think is happening on Twitter and what I'm recommending is the answer somewhere in between. And I'm going to just say something about Connor Bedard that I think people are going to scratch their head about. But I'm going to say this. If whether or not Connor Bedard, and he may be traded before, it sounds like they're not going to trade him. But one of my questions would be about Connor Bedard, and I know that people are already going to say, you have a question about Connor Bedard? This is a legit question. If he hasn't won anything at the WHL level, and you can argue the team around him or whatever, what evidence do we have that we can win with Connor Bedard in the NHL? And as a manager, I would ask that question legitimately. I'm not saying don't pick him, but when I'm building a franchise, and if you're asking the question about trading all of your assets to get Connor Bedard, that would be a reason why I would be very hesitant to do it, because I don't believe that Connor Bedard is a guy he's a franchise player, but you will need pieces around him to get to the Stanley Cup. And I would caution and look up one thing. Everyone is taught this. I'll bring up Eric Lindros, because the Philadelphia Flyers traded everything they could to get Eric Lindros. The Colorado Avalanche organization have 4 Stanley Cups, I believe, 3 Stanley Cups since that trade. The Philadelphia Flyers are still seeking their first. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, and the other thing is, like, when you're having these questions, it's a draft lottery.
Yep.
Right. So unless you're making these deals after the draft lottery is done, you know who's got the first overall pick. It's not going to work, because there's no guarantee that you're going to get the first overall pick and you're going to get Connor Bedard. But if you're able to work some things and make some moves, acquire more assets, and then to help you with the idea, like to help you with getting a better chance at Connor Bedard, maybe come the trade deadline, depending on where the Canucks are, that's something to look at. But to just say, well, yeah, I'd trade Horvat and Hughes just so that we could get a chance at, no, that's not how this works.
No, yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. Yeah,
hockey is a team sport. Like, it's not a sport where one player can make that big of a difference. You're talking about a sport where it's 60 minutes, you play 60 minutes, and your top players are on the ice at most, for the most part, like 25 to 30 minutes.
Yeah.
So less than half the game. This isn't like football where you've got quarterbacks and receivers and all that are on. You got the offense and the defense, and if you've got a good offense, you're going to be on the field for a lot more of the game than you're going to be for the. And a good defense means you're off the field a lot. So, and with basketball, where they play a lot more, the top end players play a lot more of the percentage of the game. Soccer,
Yeah.
same thing. Like it's not, you need depth, which is why I always talk about lengthening your offense, the depth in your lineup, and why when Devin was saying about having Huberdeau with Backlund, I said it's not necessarily a bad thing if everything else can work.
Yeah.
And if you're go again, look at the Oilers for the longest time, right? They had arguably two of the top, arguably the two best players in the league, two best players in the world. There are people who would make that argument, and they couldn't get out. They couldn't make the playoffs. They couldn't get out of the first round. They finally got to the conference final last year, which good, but they got swept. Look at Toronto. They've got Austin Matthews, Mitch Marner, and they can't get out of the first round.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. It's a team game. It really is. It's sometimes the uglier teams. It's the uglier teams win cups, right? So that I don't know. I'm not saying that don't draft Connor Bedard. I'm not saying avoid him, and I'm not saying he shouldn't be a number one pick. But to give up, like in a situation where you would have to give up a whole bunch to try to get him, I would be very cautious to do it.
Yeah,
even if you know who has the first pick, I would be very cautious of giving up the capital that it would take to give up for Connor Bedard.
Yeah. And with Bedard too, like you're looking at someone who's going to be on an ELC for 3 years, and then if he's as good as everyone says he is, he's going to be making, at that point, is he making 10 mil?
No, it depends on who drafts him, right?
It depends on who drafts him and how well he plays and where the cap goes. But if the cap goes up the way we expect it in the next 3 years, if he's as good as everyone as we think he is, depending on who drafts him and all that, yeah, but I think he's close.
Well,
when people are yelling, scream about wasting ELC years, like it's not gonna. Your cap flexibility for Connor Bedard is only there for a very short period of time.
Well, let me throw a scenario out. What if this is Arizona? What if Arizona gets Connor Bedard, and they're at that point at that ELC that they're going to have to pay him $10 million a year? Arizona's never paid anybody $10 million a year. I don't think Arizona has $10 million.
Well, then he gets traded and makes $10 million elsewhere, or they find someone who's willing to give him $10 million a year for him.
I mean, right. But do you know what I mean by that? Like, it's just, that's an interesting question. I don't know.
But that's what I'm saying is, like, I agree with you. I think it's not just go out and tank and get this player who you're going to have, especially for someone like a Bedard, where you're going to have him on an ELC. And then even then, the ELC, the way ELCs work and entry level contracts work with the cap, and you have to allot for bonuses. It's not easy.
Yeah, tanking doesn't.
Hockey needs. Yeah, tanking doesn't work. No, yeah, you're right. You look at the teams who have won cups. Colorado. Yeah, they had a really bad season to get McKinnon, but that was also rebuild number 2 after the cup years.
That was also the situation. I believe Patrick Waugh resigned in September 1st, and they had to just bring in Jared Bednar literally last minute.
Yep. And then you look at Tampa. That took a while to build. Yeah, they got Stamkos and Hedman right at the top of the drafts, but that took a long time to build.
Yep.
And did they win with those players on ELCs? No. Did Colorado win with McKinnon on an ELC? No.
Yeah.
So it's so tough, and so to say that you should just blow it up and give up multiple multiple core pieces for a player that you don't know whether or not you're going to get or whether or not he's going to be good, let alone how good can he be. I expect Bedard to be one hell of an NHL player, but you need players around him.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, there's just too many cautionary tales around that for me to endorse it. So, I mean, Jack
If you're able
Eichel's
to
another.
be, yeah, well, Jack Eichel, yeah, the Vegas gave up all that to get him, and then what? They weren't healthy enough to put a team around him that was good last year. If you're talking about being able to be a little more creative, where you move up one player and get a bunch of assets, and then use some of those assets to help facilitate another trade that gets, and maybe pull a Brian Burke of some sort. Okay, but there's a reason we call it pulling a Brian Burke, because it's happened once. Where they're able to have all those balls in the air and make it work, and not be giving up a lot of assets.
Yeah. And I know we should wrap up here, but I mean, the other thing with the Brian Burke, and he has said it, that draft year was not a good draft year, which made it easier to make that trade, right?
Yeah.
So
This upcoming draft is regarded as a very good draft. So teams are going to want to hold on to draft picks, and even draft picks that they do trade, first round picks that they do trade, are going to have lottery protection.
Yep.
So it's not like you're going to be adding a lottery pick if you trade a Bo Horvat.
Yeah. Maybe next week we'll go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
But that all being said, I still think that we don't. Can the Canucks play the way they have the last 3 to 5 games? For the most part, they've had lapses, but if they can play that way, they're going to get more wins than people expect. And are they going to be in the race? And let alone, are they going to even if they are looking 2-3 years down the road, are they actually going to are they able to find a way to sign Bo Horvat long term that makes sense? Are they able to find a way to move off of some other contracts that are hindering them being able to make long-term choices? Hell, we talk all about Horvat. You know who needs a new contract next year and has looked really, really good since coming in? Kuzmenko. Like, he's fit with Petey like a glove, and you have to find a way to keep him.
Yeah. Yeah. No. Yeah. I mean, you're right. It doesn't, like, when I say stay calm, I'm not saying don't have questions. There are good questions out there, but I just don't think that you need to. I don't know. I'm more. I think the rage around Twitter is perturbing me a little bit more, because it than it should. But I just feel like that's what people are getting off of right now. It's just, it's so easy to be critical behind a keyboard, baby. And I'm trying. I think in general, I'm trying to stop.
I heard a really interesting sort of just talk about how, sort of theory about how people who use Twitter and are live tweeting things, like they almost skip the is this thought rational step of going through your brain before you overtly or outwardly react. They're just like they have to get it out. And so I'm working, because I'm a millennial, and I do have the phone habit. The phone you have to have it and on the phone, like talking or tweeting or on there. I do have that bad habit. I'm trying to break that, especially during sporting events and hockey games, and not feel like I have to tweet and see what everyone else is saying, because I feel like it takes you out of watching the game, and B, yeah, you're so focused on what you're going to say next instead of being able to like actually process things at a more rational level.
You know who's taught me, and you and Tyler have taught me that though. Tyler doesn't overreact. Tyler is one of the calmer people. I guess that's what makes him such a good referee. Is he doesn't, and you bring ration to this. I mean, you are yes, I think that at times you classify yourself as emotion, but you're probably a little bit more rational than you give yourself credit for, from my perspective anyway. But I also, and Tyler and Chris, you guys are all very calm. Even Devin, as emotional as Devin at times can express himself, I think he's very rational at times at the core of it. So I think that's helped me just be a bit more rational as well. But
and I think it's just it's gotten, it's so hard because it's just like even everyone, because everyone has a voice, everyone becomes an expert, quote unquote, on a lot of things. So it's just it's picking and choosing your battles, and knowing that there's no one right answer, right?
Yeah.
There's no one way to build a championship team.
Yeah,
and
no, you're right.
Again, and I'll stress this again with where the Canucks are at. They're one of the youngest teams in the league. So even if you say that you need them to rebuild, they are still one of the youngest teams in the league. And when you look at the average age of Stanley Cup team winners, they're a lot older than you would think.
Yep.
So it takes time to learn how to play winning hockey. And it doesn't change overnight. And you need to find a way to, you just, unfortunately, the word of the day is, and it's a word that Canucks fans are going to hate, it's patience.
Yep.
So,
all right, we should leave it there. I know people have plans and stuff, so we should get this done. But we'll kind of we are scheduled for Sunday. We will have a podcast next Sunday. We may have a podcast. I'll do the news packs during the week. They'll be back to afternoon. We may have a Thursday Flames podcast. I'm not sure what's going on. We'll figure that out there at some point there as well. But keep an eye out. We'll always have something up. We'll get the clips back. I haven't been able to do them just due to work, but I'll try to get a little bit more of those done if I can. But how do we follow you? Thank everyone for watching and listening. How do we follow you?
I am Bearded Connect 03 on Twitter, and thank you, Takedown Legend. This isn't a hell of a jersey. The Abbotsford Canucks are in town in Calgary this weekend, so figured I'd show off the new jersey that I got.
Oh, there we go. I will be updating my jersey wardrobe here soon. You can follow Tyler, TNOBLE, Christian Schneid's, SCHNEIDZ. The poor guy has been up for Canada and Germany games, and I don't know how he's feeling right now. I haven't seen the score in the Spain-Germany game yet, so I don't know how he's feeling there. Devin, out with the Peelers, Gordhow09, have fun in Banff. And of course, you could follow me, KEVOLE, Shifts and Pucks, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch. Subscribe wherever you get your audio, as well as on the Area 51 Sports Network. Also, give Fireside a Chat a follow. They will be recording tonight, and their Flames podcast will be out tomorrow. So we'll connect with them as well. And we thank you for watching. We thank you for listening. We will talk to you all very soon. Bye for now.